in the design phase, in the building phase, absolutely, you might want to do a 3D digital twin that you can walk through and kind of get an experience of it as it's being built. And you can overlay then virtual furniture, different colors on the walls, and all kinds of stuff. So that's super interesting. Then when it's built and you're like ready to promote it, like what we were using at WeWork, you want to like go into a space that's beautiful. You want to like capture it in the best possible light, and you want to make sure that people get an experience for it. And this is where I think something like a 3D tool really shines, because you can't hide anything. So many times, if you go on to a site, like, but a lot of times you go on and some of these places, it's a little hard to understand the flow of a space, exactly the connection of this room to this room, and so on, because pictures don't really tell the full story. It doesn't tell you the full story, and it doesn't give you the flow or energy of a space. In a 3D tour, you can feel it all. This is why we now have, we did a recent survey with Sumper, who's one of the largest property portals in the US for rentals. 72% of people would rent a space without ever setting foot in there, as long as it had a 3D tour. It's even higher for buying a place, an apartment or a house, because it's giving you the confidence that it really is the way it's, that it's being represented. With the picture, you're like, what is the angle? The room is maybe not as big as it looks like, but a 3D tour, everything is shown, right?
Christine here with another fun episode of the Coliving Code Show. Airs every Wednesday. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, ISL Furnishings. They're a brand created through inner space living, and they're all about creating exciting spaces where design meets function. They've actually done quarters in Star City. So they've definitely done some big communities, some awesome stuff. You could see the pictures on their website. Inner space parlayed its success in commercial grade unit furniture and conceived an elevated offering. And they strongly believe in the co-living industry, which is cool. And they were founded with the mission to bring your brand to life. Their goal is to revolutionize the unit furniture experience. And driven by creativity, ISL Furnishings believe that interiors should inspire brilliance. Every venue has its own voice. They exist to clarify that voice, interpret your brand vision, and deliver to quality on time, every time. And like I said, yes, they've done Star City and quarters, but they've also done smaller communities. They can do 10 beds and up. And you can definitely check them out at islfurnishings.com. Christine here with another fun, exciting episode of the Co-Living Code Show every Wednesday, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud. Also, if you guys can write a quick review or a thumbs up or a like, that would be amazing. We would love that. We've been running the show for over 2 years now. Speaking of which, we do still have the one opening for a corporate partnership, and also have a couple openings coming up for actual interviews. So just reach out to us and we can get you more information. So our next guest has so much energy. He's so positive, and it was so much fun to finally get him on the show. I brought on Robin Daniels with Matterport. He has spent over 2 decades in leading companies, including WeWork. So he was actually the CMO of WeWork, Salesforce, LinkedIn, and many more. Now he is the CMO of Matterport, the leader in 3D virtual tours that's making it easier to engage with and sell any space and building anywhere. I know a lot of co-living operators, big and small, are already using this technology. Obviously, COVID kind of sped that up because we all need to be doing virtual tours now. And lastly, we go really deep into marketing strategies, those for even those with very little budget that are just starting out, and even the ones with bigger budgets. He gives some amazing marketing tips, strategies. Again, I know you guys will love this week's episode, and I hope it helps. So let's launch in. This week, brought on Robin Daniels with Matterport. Yeah, do a little dance. He's so much fun. You guys are going to love this interview because we've been on a panel together before, and we've spoke a couple times. We just have these amazing, fun conversations. So you guys get ready for this one. So welcome to our show this week.
Thank you, Christine. I'm so glad to be here.
And so you're originally from the Nordics, and then you're from Denmark, and then you been in California. You were in California for like, what, 20 years?
20 years, yeah. So I had this dream when I was a kid, because I'm a computer nerd, to always to go to Silicon Valley and live the dream with all the other nerds of the world, which I then did. I bought a one-way ticket when I was 21 to go to California. I didn't have a job or a place to stay. I didn't know a single person. I'd never been. I just wanted to go, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't live my life with regret and look back on my life when I was 60, 70 years old, thinking to myself, I could have done it. I should have done it, but I was too scared. So that's always kind of driving thing in my life. So I did it. And, been in Silicon Valley for 20 years, except last year, COVID kind of upended everything. And I decided to move back to Copenhagen at the end of 2020, and I've been back for a few months, and it's been great because at first when I came, it was completely open. Life felt normal, which it hadn't felt like a while in the U.S. Let's be honest. And then now it's completely locked down, very strict lockdown here in Denmark, and they just extended it till March 1st, so it's going to be another month and a half or so of strict lockdown. But these are all things I can deal with. In the grand scheme of things, got health, got family, got happiness, the things that matter the most, really.
And I know people from around the world are listening, and they always have every country has like a different definition of strict lockdown. So like how
Yes.
strict is it there now? Like no restaurant patios, no inside eating. Well, it's cold there now, so I don't know if
It's
you eat
cold. Yeah,
outside.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's really strict. You're not allowed to see more than 5 people at a time, max 5 people in a gathering. You're really supposed to not leave your home. You're not supposed to go into the office. The only thing that's really open is supermarkets and pharmacies. We also have restaurants can do takeout, but lots of them are just shut down just because they're not seeing enough business, but they can still do takeout. Nothing else is open. You can't go experience anything. You can't go to any museums or galleries or plays or anything, which is, of course, makes sense. But it does feel very restrictive. I mean, but it's crazy. I took a walk this weekend with my family. It was so crazy crowded. It felt like never seen this many people. I think people are just going a little stir crazy, me included. So I was like, let's get out, get some air. At least you can walk around and see the world, right? So that felt great. But my God, there was a lot of people out. It felt like the whole world was out in a way I've never seen in Copenhagen before. It was a little crazy.
That is super
What about you?
interesting.
Where is it strict lockdown where you are?
California. So San Diego, and I know San
Yeah.
Francisco was hit so tough,
Oh,
and it's so expensive to live there, and then you're stuck and you're not doing the fun things you pay so much in taxes to do.
absolutely.
San Diego, I mean, the whole state. I mean, our governor, Gavin Newsom, who is probably about to get pulled out of his position.
Yeah.
It's a really big, thing right now.
Uh,
And he literally this week reopened the
yeah.
businesses because we had the stay-at-home order. Honestly, nobody was staying at home.
Oh,
It was
no.
they weren't, but the restaurants, some stayed open, but then that really hurt the ones that
Mm,
followed the order. That was
mhm.
8 or 9 weeks we just had of that. So they
Yeah,
just
yeah,
this
it's
week
amazing.
on
Yeah.
Monday, so 4 days ago, took that away. Restaurant dining outside only,
Mm.
not inside, no movie theaters, that kind of stuff is still
Sure. Yeah,
closed,
yeah, yeah,
understandably.
yeah. I
So
mean,
so yeah.
I'm actually coming to the U.S. for the first time since we left in a couple of weeks. I can't wait. I mean, I miss the sunshine. I got to be honest. The winters in Denmark are a little hard. It's cold. It's gray. It's rainy. Now that you can't even leave your house really anymore. It's like it really takes a little bit of fortitude. And I love the U.S. I love California. I love the U.S. I love traveling. I miss most of all. I miss seeing people and I miss traveling. Love traveling and experiencing new places, new inputs. It always kind of expands my mind, and that's when I feel the most creative when I'm out there experiencing the world. And it's been a little hard, I think, that the last year, this like feeling like your world is so closed off from that part.
Oh, without a doubt. And you're coming back to San Francisco to visit?
Yeah, yeah, just yes, that's my team is all there, and hopefully we can do some remote distance, get-togethers, because that's been one of the hardest parts about this. I mean, we've proven with technology can be super efficient, productive, collaborative, and it works well. And even there's a lot of benefits to you saving time from commuting, and you can have more time with your family and yourself. But it also is hard to have the same energy flow that you have as when you're with people, especially I think when it comes to creative problem solving. If you're just like doing like standard stuff all the time, doing it over digital tools, great. But if you're a group of people and you're trying to think about creatively how to solve really like complex or gnarly problems, it's hard to do digitally because there's not a flow to a conversation. Like you and I, one on one, totally fine. But if you're 5 or 10 people, it's really hard to have a flow that's satisfactory because in a normal space when you're being creative, you're talking over each other a little bit. I'm building on this person's idea and then I'm building on that person's idea and that kind of flows. Can't really do that in a Zoom meeting as well. It's just really hard. You don't have a whiteboard, you don't have that creative space. I'm hopeful that I notice a lot of smart people who are feeling the same way. So they're working on solving that for the whole of humanity, which is great because once we get there, then this way of working, the freedom you have is amazing. You can work from anywhere, anytime. That's why I moved to Denmark. I still work for a California-based company, but I'm in Denmark. Because it still works. It's totally fine. You can be super productive.
I love that. And so Robin is the CMO of Matterport. So I promise everybody on this interview, we're going to deep dive into some marketing and sales strategies for co-living operators. However, Robin, I would love, and it's kind of like you alluded a little bit,
Mhm.
you're amazing at building, teams and culture and motivating them. And you're such a positive guy. So I would love for you to kind of talk about, building strong teams and
Mhm.
building that culture now remotely.
No, it's there's no doubt this has been one of the things that have stretched me the most as a leader. But that's a good thing. I think, as a leader, you should be stretched and you should be like challenged in the way you think about things. And it's been great. I came into Matterport in the end of March of last year. So I've been remote from day one. I haven't really met anybody in my team or in the company. So it's a little weird way to start. And so the way you build trust and camaraderie in this world, I think it's just slightly different. You have to over communicate. You can't assume that people know exactly what you mean if you're only communicating through digital channels, because I think a lot of stuff gets lost in that. So you have to uh, communicate not just once, but multiple times and really emphasize exactly what it is that you mean and making sure that people have actually heard you and they understand it and they can kind of nearly say it back to you in some ways, which I think is a really important part. Like, I think so many times as leaders, we say something once and we assume that everyone has heard it. But the reality is that people need to hear things multiple times. And especially nowadays with these different channels that we have, Slack and Zoom and email and other stuff as well, I think you have to really ensure that people are on the same page. Because you've seen like if you go in and you have some projects that are really critical and they start veering off and people going in different directions, then pulling them back gets quite painful. So making sure that from the beginning everything is clear and you're kind of going towards the same goal. So I think communication is key. I think having the right uh, goals, KPIs that you're going towards, because that also unifies people. If you have too many people in a team that have different KPIs and different goals, I think not only is collaboration hard, it's really impossible. Why would these people then work together? So you got to find commonality for why people should work together. Like, let's put up some big things that we want to achieve that require all of us and all of our unique skill sets in order to be successful. And then you start seeing the camaraderie and breaking down the barriers between people in a really, really positive way. But for me, so yeah, starting remotely and being a leader this way has been super fun and really challenged my sense of like, how do I think about communication? How do I think about energy sharing? A big part of I think being a leader is how do you pass on energy to other people? And at the beginning of COVID, I was like, wow, this really sucks talking into a screen that's kind of two dimensional. And I just look at 20 boxes. Some of them have on camera and some of them are not on camera. You're like, oh, this is hard. And so, but you just kind of like sometimes have to, sometimes you have to show up in a more empathetic, authentic way. And sometimes you have to show up and really like, I'm going to pump up my team today, and like really boost yourself up in some way because the energy that you want to have transmit across the world has to be like at a level 11 nearly in some ways because the other side has to feel and be like, oh, I want to be part of that. So you have to like you have to read the room, I think, pretty well, which is not always easy in this world. Because again, I had this experience where I was talking to this was actually not just my team. I was talking to a different team about our goals in marketing leadership, and half of the team had like the camera off, and I could tell a lot of people were like trying to do email at the same time as listening to me, and it's just not a very satisfactory thing to like talk to. So you kind of have to block it out. Nearly, it feels like nearly everybody has turned into a performer in some way, shape, or form. And it's the secret, of course, is I'm sure you know. I think one of the things I love about you is doing it in an authentic, fun, compassionate way that people can relate to. Because that's what connects us ultimately.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And my one of my favorite quotes. So you use the word, being enthusiastic.
Mhm.
Sales is the transfer of enthusiasm, right?
Yes,
So if you're
exactly.
excited, you get them excited,
Mhm.
and I
That's right.
love that. So, and then you've worked for some big companies. When you followed your dreams. Well, first I'll tell everybody they have to go to your LinkedIn page because you've written these amazing articles that are so inspirational and lots of value I got out of them. And you shared your whole story about your dream to move to San Francisco and work for you worked for a few hyper growth
I
companies,
did. I did.
LinkedIn, WeWork. So I would love for you to chat a little bit about those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things I always think about. LinkedIn is interesting because it shows your journey kind of being linear in some ways, and it just looks like, oh, look at like all the cool companies. But there's actually been the places where you learn the most, and the thing in my experience and in my opinion, where you learn the most and where you gain the most perspective is actually when things are not going well or when things are tough, either from a people perspective or a company perspective or project perspective. And those are hard to like really bring to life on LinkedIn, especially because everything seems so linear. So I try to bring that to life through my articles and so on, which you highlight. But yeah, I mean, so I came to the U.S. in 2000, and I've had the good fortune of working for some companies that were mega successful. Salesforce was probably the company I worked at that really saw my career take off. I had been growing steadily in my career until that point in time. Worked for some small companies and even some mid-sized and bigger companies, but nothing that was going through such massive transformation and such massive growth as Salesforce. And they gave me a shot, which is one of the things that now I as a leader, when I hire people, I always try to pay that forward. This notion of everybody out there just needs somebody to believe in them. And I love hiring people for aptitude and grit and passion, because a lot of times those people will go above and beyond to prove that they can do the work, that they belong, that they can be part of this magical crew of people that you're assembling. And so I love doing that. You can't do it for all roles. Of course, if you're trying to hire somebody who has scaled internationally before, you can't take a chance on somebody who's never done it before. It probably won't go well. But for a lot of roles, you can. So that notion, and I've had people in my career. First, a woman named Elise Zimmerman. My first job when I first came to the U.S., I was 21 years old. She was the VP of marketing. She took a chance on me. My boss at Salesforce, who took a chance on me and said, "You're going to run this product line." And I'll always remember that. So I've had this in my career. Now it's like it's reversed. I'm trying to do the same. So I was at Salesforce, was an incredible experience working with one of the most visionary CEOs of all time. He still is, Mark Benioff.
Yes.
Then I went to Box, and that was a much smaller company. And we went through the whole kind of hyper growth journey and IPO, and working for Aaron Levy, who's also one of the most visionary CEOs, was also an incredible experience. But he was a young guy compared to Benioff, that kind of had a lot of experience from Oracle and other companies. Aaron Levy had dropped out of high school to build Box, with his best friend. So it was like a very different environment, but super inspiring in a different way. And then, I ended up going to LinkedIn, which was really fun. And I actually thought I was going to be at LinkedIn for a long time. Loved the company, loved the platform. But then this company that was going through hypergrowth came knocking on my door called WeWork. This was at the end of 2018. So it was just about to go into the stratosphere. The valuation was skyrocketing. They were basically popping up everywhere. I love the mission because it felt to me like a physical manifestation of what LinkedIn could be. LinkedIn, I think, is the best, most positive platform for connecting with people. It's very authentic because people have their real personalities. You can't really be a troll on LinkedIn, and people are very positive and they're sharing things that cheer each other on. It's like a really great community. And the whole vision of WeWork was, how can you really replicate that in physical life? So we are better as humans together. And an office space is not just shouldn't just be a space where you go to do work. It should be a space where you go and you connect with humans that make you better, more happy. And that was proven to be massively successful because every company was felt like they were going into a WeWork space, and even big companies. So I joined, going through hyper growth and through like that IPO journey, and then of course it all kind of came crashing down as we went through the IPO process, which was painful, I would say. But I learned a ton. So I reflect back. I was only there a year. I learned a ton. I met some incredible people. I have absolutely zero regrets about leaving LinkedIn and going to WeWork. Because I always think of it this way. Like I said at the beginning, I never want to look back on my life and having regrets on I should have done this or I could have done this. And I have no regrets about going to WeWork at all. And I wish them all the success in the world. I really hope they make it because I feel like the world needs what they're doing. The idea at the core of it that most offices suck, and we want offices to be a place that give people joy and happiness and community. That's a mission worth fighting for. And it was also at WeWork that I got introduced to Matterport. So we were starting to use Matterport uh, as a technology partner to showcase the beauty of all our spaces. Because so many people wanted to come in and take a tour of a WeWork space, and then they go to the other WeWork space and the next one and the next one, and they'll take 10 tours, and that's time consuming for them. It's costly for us because we have to constantly put teams on to give tours. So why can't we just do a virtual tour? So we were starting to use Matterport a lot. And so when I was introduced to the CEO of Matterport, this is after I left WeWork, I was just kind of blown away by the vision. And a few months later, I ended up joining the company as the CMO, and that's where I am today. So yeah, to bring us up to speed on where we are, I'm the chief marketing officer over at Matterport. And to me, I've worked at some cool companies, but it's the first company I've ever worked for where my son, who's 14, went, Dad, this is so cool. It's because it's kind of like a video game. When you walk through a Matterport space, it's like, oh, it's really cool to kind of see. It's like such an immersive experience, really. So super excited to be here, and happy, of course, to talk about what we're doing as well.
Awesome. No, thank you. I loved hearing that journey. So that was said so perfectly and in a great trajectory. So how long has Matterport been in business again?
It's a good question. So in June, it'll be our 10-year anniversary. Yeah, very exciting. I know. And we are about 250 people or so. And we have offices all over the world, Asia Pacific, in London, and certainly headquarters is in California. I'm now here in Denmark, but I'm still leading the marketing team from Copenhagen. And we have captured billions of square feet of space. And we started really as a 3D camera company. And now there was a new CEO that came in. His name is RJ Pittman. He's ex Apple, ex Google, ex eBay, incredible visionary. And he's really morphed the company into much more of a platform company and a software company. And so what we really are all about now is our mission, it sounds lofty, but I'll just tell you what it is. We think that every building and every space in the world should have a digital twin, a digital representation of itself. And I'll tell you, here's an interesting fact I learned recently. There are 2 billion websites in the world, 2 billion. There are over 4 billion spaces in the world, 4 billion buildings. So just when you think about the value that has been created of digitizing knowledge, with Google, like being able to search everything, and all the companies that have been built on digitizing everything else, the physical spaces of the world is probably the most untapped market. 99.9999% of all buildings do not have a digital twin. They're not online. They're stuck in the past. And the value of those buildings, if you bring them online, anything from houses, homes, co-living situations, museums, galleries, retail stores, the value you can unlock is immense. And so that's our mission. It sounds lofty, but that's what we're going for.
No, you have to think big to do big things. I love, love, love that mission. And you guys are not an overnight success. There's been so
No,
many
no.
companies, 10 years, a decade, and this type
Uh,
of, I'm a huge technology fan and nerd. And like that was, I mean, imagine building that stuff 10 years ago. People are like, how are you guys going to do this?
Totally,
No, that's
totally. There's some of
amazing.
these companies out there now that are gaining such traction. I'm like, wow, because of COVID, they really just shot up out of nowhere. And I wish them luck, but I always find, to your point, like the overnight success just it comes with so much pressure in a different way that you're going to keep that up forever, which is completely unrealistic. Nobody's going to keep up that growth forever. And the fact that we've taken 10 years to get to where we are today, I think just shows the persistence and the thoughtfulness of how we actually want to create value for our customers. Really,
When did RJ, the new CEO, when did he take over?
he started 2 years ago. 2 years
Okay.
ago, yeah.
Cool.
So he started about a year and a half before I did. Yeah.
Cool. And
Mhm,
so, obviously we showed a little bit beginning of this interview
mhm,
of, the 3D renderings and walking through them. How about, and I've never talked, and I haven't talked to you about this lately.
mhm,
Do you guys what if the co-living building is
mhm,
being built
mhm.
currently and they have their little renderings that you could see
Yeah.
online? Can you guys do the walkthroughs yet? How would you do that?
We can. So, every single space on Earth goes through more or less the same phases of being built. So it has to be designed, then it has to be built, then you have to promote the space, then you have to kind of operate it, then you have to figure out like what do I do from an insurance perspective and everything else, and then you have to maintain it. Like space gets old, it has to get painted, and it has to be light fixtures have to get fixed and so on. Doesn't matter if you're talking about an apartment, a home, a co-living space, a manufacturing floor, a retail store. Every building more or less goes through those exact same phases. Now, they might be called different things depending on the industry, but they all have to be designed, built, and operated, and so on. And we have companies and customers who use us for all of those things. So to your point, in the design phase, in the building phase, absolutely, you might want to do a 3D digital twin that you can walk through and kind of get an experience of it as it's being built. And you can overlay then virtual furniture, different colors on the walls, and all kinds of stuff. So that's super interesting. Then when it's built and you're like ready to promote it, like what we were using at WeWork, you want to like go into a space that's beautiful. You want to like capture it in the best possible light, and you want to make sure that people get an experience for it. And this is where I think something like a 3D tool really shines because you can't hide anything. So many times, if you go on to a site, like I'll be honest, like Airbnb, I love Airbnb, amazing company. I'm actually renting an Airbnb in 2 weeks when I'm going to the US. But a lot of times you go on, and some of these places, it's a little hard to understand the flow of a space, exactly the connection of this room to this room, and so on,
Mhm.
because pictures don't really tell the full story. It doesn't tell you the full story, and it doesn't give you the flow or energy of a space. In a 3D tour, you can feel it all. This is why we now have, we did a recent survey with Sumper, who's one of the largest property portals in the US for rentals. 72% of people would rent a space without ever setting foot in there, as long as it had a 3D tour. It's even higher for buying. Yes,
72%?
72% of people would rent a space without even setting foot in there, as long as it had a 3D tour. It's even higher for buying a place, an apartment or a house, because it's giving you the confidence that it really is the way that it's being represented. With the picture, it's like, what is the angle? The room is maybe not as big as it looks like, but a 3D tour, everything is shown, right? So I actually had a friend from WeWork. He texted me when I just joined Matterport. He texted me about 2 months later. He said, "Hey, I just bought a house in Montana." He was living in New York. I never set foot in it. We just bought it, and we took the Matterport tour maybe 100 times to like understand everything about the house, and they ended up buying it. Again, they never even went there or anything. They just did it because of this. So the digital transformation is real, and everyone I think is waking up, whether or not you're a it's somebody who has to rent a space out, sell a space, or you're managing an operating space. Like we can bring these spaces to life through the power of something like Matterport.
Nice. And then what are I mean, again, this is probably future pacing a bit, but,
Yeah.
doing any VR, AR, you're putting the
Mhm.
Oculus on and you're walking through the location. Is that something you see in the near future?
So we already do VR. I wouldn't say it's like been super widely adopted, and I think that's mostly because it's not like every consumer has the VR set. So we do support VR today, and for some spaces, it's been great because you get even more immersive experience, right? But I think the power of what Matterport has been about from day one is making it accessible to everyone. It doesn't matter if you have a crappy old Chromebook that's a few years old, or you have a old iPhone that's been lying around, an iPhone 6, and as long as you have a browser, you can take a Matterport tour, which is the beauty of it. So making it accessible to everyone. We don't want this to be an exclusive, hard to access thing that's only for an elite set of people. This should be accessible to everyone anywhere in the world. That's a big part of our mission, is because when you think about what we're trying to do, we're trying to democratize 3D, and we want to make it accessible to everyone. I think of it, the reason I try to join very purpose driven companies, and that's kind of been a North Star in my life. The reason I love Matterport, besides the phenomenal technology, because I am a geek at heart as well, is the idea of of making the world accessible to everybody. So imagine you can go and visit, whether or not that's the Louvre in Paris, or try to see what it's like to be in a refugee camp in the Gaza Strip, or maybe go visit the Meiji Gardens in Tokyo. Like making the world accessible to everyone gives us more empathy, more understanding, more knowledge of what it's like to actually have different perspectives. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we're trying to do. So when I say we have millions of spaces out there, so many museums, even schools and spaces, I think it opens up the possibility of you having that understanding of what are other people on planet Earth actually understanding and experiencing, which is a beautiful thing.
Awesome. Well, I love that 72% quote. That is incredible. So, another stat I'm sure you have off the top of your head is from the start of COVID, what was the percentage of growth of virtual tours? That shit was insane.
Well, so it's been absolutely insane. I'll give you a stat from Redfin, who's one of our partners.
Yeah.
They saw a 500% increase in virtual tours. I think it was it the first 2 or 3 months. I don't remember the time frame, but it was in a very short time frame because, of course, everybody was going through looking at that as well. So the increase has been incredible. One of the things that we did to really help with our mission is we finally released Matterport for iPhone.
Mhm.
So we started in 2011 as a 3D camera company, but you have to go buy the camera, and it's an incredible camera. And we've made, of course, many modifications since then. It takes beautiful, high res, 150 megapixel 3D photos, and it's just gorgeous. But the whole idea is you're never going to capture and scan 4 billion buildings if every person has to have that camera. So the only way you do it is if you open up the platform to allow people with their phone, an Android or an iPhone, to be able to do it themselves. So back in May, we opened up Matterport for iPhone. So now, because we have such a massive spatial data library from the millions of buildings we've scanned, we can take 2D photos and we can turn them into 3D, which is something that really is hard to do. And it's the brilliance of our engineers who have been working on this from the start. And so we released it, and I'll tell you, in the first week of releasing Matterport for iPhone, we had more new account signups than we did in the first 8 years of being in business, the first 9 years of being in business. So it's just, yes. But it really allowed people to go out and say, okay, I'm going to scan my room, my house, my store. So
Mhm.
one of the most popular models that we have now for Matterport for iPhone, and it's completely free, is a retail store in Chile. Somebody was shut down due to COVID, and they took their store, they scanned it, they put it online, they embedded some e-commerce in there, so you can actually go and buy things from there. And it's one of the most popular models. That person has just been promoting it on social media, promoting it using digital. And it's a great example of like how to be creative in these times using new technologies like Matterport.
Oh, that's such a great story. And when exactly was that released?
It was May the 4th. I chose that day because it's such a nerdy day. May the 4th be with you, right? It's a
Yeah.
Star Wars day. So that was the day we launched it, May the 4th.
Oh, wow. So, like, you guys were already targeted for that day? COVID
No,
already started March. Did you guys,
no.
like, push it sooner?
Yes. So this is what I came in end of March
I
to
know.
Matterport, and COVID had just started. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And then we were having a discussion as the executive team. The vision was always to release Matterport for iPhone, but it was going to be end of the year, maybe even 2021. And we just made a call like, this is our moment. People need this technology to keep their business alive, to keep their sanity alive, like being able to actually do something and share it with the people in their life. Like we saw so many people scan the space that they were inhabiting and saying, and be able to share, like, this is where I live every day. This is my space. This is where I inhabit. And so we saw all kinds of interesting use cases pop up. So we decided at the end of March, let's pull in the release and do it and get it out there as quickly as we can. So we settled on May the 4th. And so it was basically like a mad 1 month long sprint to get this out the door. But I'll tell you, I'm so proud of the team. This is really like shows the power of having a great team. They hustled like nobody's business, and they got out this release. Both the engineering side, the product side, the marketing side did a great job. We've won 2 marketing awards for our campaign already this year, or last year. And just it's a testament of just the creativity that went into actually getting this out, because it's the first time also as a company that we're releasing something that's a little bit more prosumery, consumery, like the ability for anybody, for free to just use your phone to capture space. So it was very different than anything else we'd ever done before, which is more targeting businesses or people who are trying to make money out of this. It was very different. So kudos and hat tip to the team for getting it done.
Oh, I remember. I think I was reaching out to you guys around that time, and you guys are like, "It's bananas right now. We can't talk about anything."
Exactly,
Because
exactly.
yeah, because there were so many co-living operators, I kept hearing your guys' name being brought up, brought up, brought up.
Yeah.
Virtual tours, these co-living operators were so excited. Hey, this
Yeah.
is how we're surviving right now. We're doing these virtual tours. And not even just this, so many, and this is another question for you is that, and this is a statistic, I'm not sure if you know, is that so many people with co-living, a lot of them are jumping around, especially these
Yes.
nomads will
Yeah.
jump
Yeah.
countries. Are they
Yes. Yeah.
really going to fly out,
Mhm.
to Chiang Mai, Thailand and take a look at, a co-living community and then fly back to the States? Maybe not. They're just going to go after seeing a few photos. Do you
Totally.
happen to know like how many international people actually make a home purchase, a rental, rent a space without physically seeing it?
It's a good question. I mean, we don't have the data because they don't go through us. They always go through a co-living operator or a real estate portal like Sumper or Redfin or something like that. So we don't have the data directly because we don't just sit on real estate data or living data. We sit on lots of companies use us for manufacturing or for facilities management and so on. But I'll tell you some stats. I have some stats. I pulled them up just because I knew you were going to be interested in this. So 95% of renters said they would likely rent a property if it had a 3D tour on it. Right? So it already goes up. And they was 90% say they'd be more interested in renting a property and a listing, not just even looking at a listing if it had a 3D tour versus a listing that didn't have a 3D tour. And 98% of property owners, so if you have a co-living space, 98% say that their listing with a 3D tour gives them an advantage over some listing that doesn't have a 3D tour, which is kind of a no-brainer, really. So, and let me see if there's anything else here. 82% of property owners said that um, they would rent, something entirely virtually if the 3D tour gave them the confidence that the space was actually the way it was. So all the signs are there. I think the world is just kind of catching up to the fact that you can actually do this, and it's easy. I think if you saw some of these, if you're not like deeply steeped in tech like you are, and I've been for a while, you saw some of these like 3D tours, you might think this is like hard to do. It's magical. The fact that you can do it with your iPhone, I think, would blow a lot of people's minds away.
No, that's amazing. And again, I have that property management background of like
Hmm.
multifamily, large apartment communities from the early
Yeah.
2000s. Okay, so what are your thoughts? I was just thinking of this, and it could go the same for co-living. Is like they're doing a virtual tour of like their model, their furnished model, one bedroom
Yeah.
versus a vacant unit. Do you always suggest, hey, do both?
Yes, absolutely. I would, you probably want to separate the units up. If you're doing multiple, you don't want to like combine them. I think that would be a little weird because it gives maybe a false sense. But you certainly should do them all, and then you probably want to do some communal spaces or how they're connected, because I think that's a big part of like how is my unit connected to other people's unit, my room or my how we're gonna get to the kitchen, the bathroom. If those are shared or the communal spaces. Those are super important in people making the decision of where they're going to live and how they're going to function in that space. It gives that there's all this data in the world, right? And I've shared some of it. The thing that's always hard to communicate, which I'm trying to work with my team on finding, I'm sure you've heard this as well, is there's such an emotional connection to the place you live and inhabit. That's beyond just the statistics and the data and the financial benefits, and this is cheaper and it's costing this much and so on. It's like the reason why you go and you want to tour 10 different places to live is because you want to feel what it's like to be there. What is the energy I'm getting from the space? Every space has a feeling, an energy, and you want to see, can I envision myself living there? What about my family, if you have a family? What about the neighborhood? What about the light that's coming through the windows? Like, that is so important. It's one of the reasons why, again, coming back to my experience first with Matterport at WeWork, a reason why a company would go and visit 10 different WeWork locations is because they wanted to feel what it was like to be in that space. They all more or less cost the same. So there's like, oh, can I envision my team being here? What would it be like? And the 3D model, the virtual walkthrough really replicates that as close as you can be to actually being there in real life.
Ooh, and to that point, another thing I was going to ask, and people have heard me speak, I've said it multiple times, but I'd love for you to speak on this too, is having people in that, whether you have photos on your website, or you're doing virtual tour, have some people kind of hanging out in the kitchen or the common areas together. Obviously, you guys blur their face, so that's good. But I would love for you to chat a little bit about that too, because community is so
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah, I mean, think about it's one of the things again I learned from WeWork. We when I first came in as a CMO there, we had such great photography of all our buildings, but they were a little devoid of life because they were always empty. And we're like, the whole thing that makes WeWork special are the people who are inhabiting these buildings, the artists, the creators, the people who are building the next great companies of tomorrow. Why do we not have pictures of them in there? And I would say it's just absolutely the same thing. When you see a lot of these spaces, the next generation is actually putting in photos of people or even having people in there. You know, there's no reason why when you're doing a 3D scan with your phone or using a Pro 2 camera from Matterport that you can't have people in there. You absolutely should. But of course, if you're taking a scan and you're moving through a space, then you got to be sure that as you're moving your camera that they sit exactly the same, or else it's going to be like a little jarring if I'm standing here looking at this way and I see Christina's there, and then I go to the next point in the tour and suddenly you're gone. It's a little jarring, right? So because if you have a real person, make sure that they're standing still as you're doing the photography. So the other way to do it is you can use CG, computer generated graphics, and put in there people in there. But then you just have to have the skills to do that. That's not maybe as easy. So there are ways to do it. But to your point, people definitely add a lot of value. They add a lot of feel to a space and perspective on like how a space is going to be used. So it's really important. We're hearing that a lot as well.
And the CGI, is that something you guys can do plug in after the fact?
We don't do it today. We do it through partners. So we have a lot of partners who are working on putting in CG into Matterport models, and I can share some of them with you if you want to share on with your audience as well. Virtual staging, putting in people into spaces and so on. That gives it a better feel for what it's actually like than just an empty shell, which is sometimes what you look at. So it's more interesting that way.
Oh, cool. No, I agree. And then the camera, you guys still have your guys' camera that you started out with. So
Yes.
people can they rent it? Because I've heard different pricing models. So I want to hear it from the source. Like, do they have to buy the camera still? Can they rent the camera?
So the camera certainly made improvement. We first released what was called the Pro One camera. Now the one that's in production is called the Pro Two camera. It retails for $3,495. Sometimes we have discounts and special pricing for that. You can also buy it on Amazon. We recently became an Amazon partner. So the way to do it, if you want to scan a space, you really have a couple of different options. You can use your phone; it's free, highly recommended, or an iPad. You can use a 360 camera, which is kind of like a little camera that's a candy bar size. You can buy on Amazon for a few $100s. Really good quality, super fast, highly recommended. If you want the highest quality, the Pro 2 camera from Matterport is still top of the line and considered the best of the best. If you want, a massive space, a beautiful space, the highest level of fidelity. Like, think of it, an iPhone, I think, takes a photo with, I think, 20 megapixels. Our camera is 150 megapixels. So just the level of
Mm.
depth and quality is very different. So you have to have a camera. That's number one. Then you have to have a place to host it, and of course Matterport. And you get one space for free. And if you want to have more than one space, you can pay for it. And it's $10 a month for 5 spaces, and then it goes up from there. You can add on more if you want to have more than 5 spaces. Or so you have to have a way to capture space, and you have to host it. So that's super easy. It's all kind of integrated. And if you want to start, it can be free. The other option, to your point, is we can also send out what we call a capture technician. We have what we call Matterport capture services that send somebody out with a Pro 2. So if you don't want to invest in a camera, you don't have the expertise of kind of doing it yourself, we'll send somebody out and do it for you. And you just pay for the size of the space or per hour. So either way. But we also have a worldwide network of partners, the Matterport kind of service partners around the world. That's why we have spaces in more than 150 countries who can come out. You just do a Google search, nearly every country, you'll find people who are Matterport certified or have a Matterport camera that can come out and do your space.
Ooh, you answered my next question to make sure you're international, because
Yes.
everybody thought you guys were only in the US for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. So jumping to the marketing, your favorite, my favorite topic, your favorite topic.
Yes.
I know we've talked about this before in other interviews, is telling, how
Mhm.
important it is to tell a story. So let's say you've
Yes.
got a large co-living operator that's just opening up a building of like 350 units. I would love for you to not just talk about telling that story, but also talking about strategies on pre-leasing to try to like fill the
Mhm.
building before the day it opens.
So I'm a big believer in storytelling in the sense of uh, leading with emotion and then supporting with data and facts versus the other way around. A lot of companies, I think, or even people who are doing marketing, they do the opposite. They try to beat you over the head with too many facts without getting you emotionally interested first. And I think that's a little bit of a mistake. And I would say, I wouldn't like come out and claim that even Matterport is perfect. We're getting better in this area as well. But lead with emotion, get people hooked. And the best way I think to do it is you talk about the human benefits of being part of something. And then once you're interested, then you can tell me about the cost and the benefits and all this stuff. But get me emotionally hooked. And that emotional hook can come in many different levels. It can be you can be tying into a trend that's a global trend, maybe it's about sustainability and the global environment, how we're going to save that. It could be more at the society level. Your company is helping solve inequality and homelessness or whatever it is. It could be at the more personal level, like we are focused on making you healthier and happier and giving you more mental health and like calm, and so there's the personal benefits as well. So there's many different levels of benefits I think a company can aim for. You got to find out which ones that you're going to go for. And I think about Matterport. We certainly make it better for individuals to go and experience spaces, but we also make it better for companies who want to actually promote and sell their space. So there's many levels we can go into, and especially we now have companies who are coming to us and saying we want to cut down on CO2 emissions, and we can do that by using Matterport. I have a company who is a Matterport customer. I can't mention their name, unfortunately. They saved $2.3 million in 2020 because they used Matterport, and they saved that on travel because they were not sending people around. And so my question then was, well, let's figure out how much CO2 was actually saved, from all that travel. It's not just the financial benefit, but there's a huge environmental benefit as well because you don't have to send 40 people around the world constantly to like figure out, how to set up a space and so on. So there's like it benefits I think that you can tie into that are much more emotionally interesting to people. And that's where I would start a lot of times. So if you're marketing a co-living space, I think a lot of it's about, again, the feeling, the emotion of that space, the community you're part of. I'm sure every co-living space has a core, a thing that they're they want to be known for, right? It's probably unique from country to country, to city, or even within a city. Like, what is it that you're known for? Um, and there's probably an ethos, a mission, and that's what I would lead with. And then I would come back with, well, here are some of the more harder benefits of actually being part of that. So that's kind of my mental model of just how I think about marketing and storytelling. And I think the best companies in the world who do this, the Airbnbs and the Nikes and so on. I mean, they've nailed that. They rarely you never see a Nike ad that says, we're gonna make you 20% faster, or it's like it's always some emotional benefit, of like you being part of something. Same with Airbnb. You're part of a global community of people who want to belong anywhere they go, and that's powerful. So that's what I think. I can't remember the second part of your question. I don't know if I answered everything you
No, I
asked.
think you did very well
Okay, okay.
too. So no, that's awesome. So continuing on to that a little bit is these operators that have. Well, actually, I want to make a comment. On the time and money saved. There's some operators that were having they pace their team to like meet somebody at one of the units. Especially in New
Hmm.
York, some of the operators have units all over New York in different
Sure, sure.
buildings. It's not all one building. So they're paying them to go. The person's running late. They're showing the unit. The
Right,
person's
right.
looking at 15 other units. So, again, I think you're right. I think the owners are like, okay, this is so much more effective if people just use this virtual tour option. This is even
Totally.
pre-COVID. Obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
COVID accelerated all of that very
Yeah.
quickly. So yeah, my next question is these smaller operators that they're marketing, they don't even have a marketing budget. Okay, so like
Yeah,
off the
yeah.
top of your head, what are some really kind of cool things you think they could do out the gate?
It's funny. I highly recommend this because it's a longer topic. But I just did a video with one of my friends who created a company called Vivino, and it's like an app you can scan a wine bottle and you can figure out like
Oh
the
yeah.
rating of that wine and so on. It's really cool. It's like used by millions of people around the world. I love the guy, but he does a series called Raw Startup where he brings on entrepreneurs and leaders and asks them questions. My topic was how to do marketing with zero budget. To your question,
Ooh.
how to do marketing with zero budget. And I think a lot of what we talked about is, if you have zero budget, you have to lean into a couple of different things. I'll just give some pointers here. You have to lean into storytelling. You have to lean into content marketing. You have to lean into social. You have really no excuse to not lean into those channels. You might be nervous because what if people don't like what I say? You might be nervous because you have no audience. Well, guess what? You're never going to get an audience unless you try. And in that game, in that social sphere, in the content sphere, it's a lot about experimentation. Got to try to put out a lot of content and put out content that people really resonate with and create a community around that content. And that happens through videos, through social. It happens to, I think, a lot of good content writing that you should do. Not too long, but find an angle that's unique to you where you have a point of view. If you're a co-living operator and you have a certain point of view about the world and how people should live together, bring that to life in interesting ways. Maybe bring in different voices, but there's really no excuse not to lean into these channels that are completely free. I mean, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok now is an amazing platform for really showcasing creativity. Um, Lean into all those channels as much as you can because you have zero budget. So I think that is my number one tip by far. The second thing is, find allies who believe in the similar things, maybe not exactly, but mostly the same little things that you do, and get them to be part of your story and get them to help you to amplify your story as well. It's very hard. Sometimes you feel like you're all alone trying to like yell to everybody what your story is and get the word out. Get people to help you. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. Oftentimes, this takes a lot of investment in relationships and showing up for other people when they need it and being there and helping them out, but it always pays off. Some of the greatest relationships that I've had throughout my career is when I've invested in them and honestly haven't wanted anything. It's always been friendly. But then, every now and then it's like, you know what, I could really use some advice from this person, or I could really use some insight. And then you call them up and they're always willing to help. So investing in relationships online or in person is super, super helpful. And that becomes part of your community of why you're special. I would definitely invest in that as well. But I would, just because we don't have all evening to discuss this, you should go check out that video as well.
And you said which it's on YouTube, right?
On
What's the name of
YouTube.
the
It's the name of the video channel is Raw Startup, and the video is how to do marketing with zero budget.
Yes, definitely check that out, you guys. After you listen to this interview, that's all. I'm going to check it out. That's amazing. And so, okay, another social media platform, brand new one. It's getting a lot of hype. I actually got an invite. That's kind of exclusive right now. You probably already know what I'm
Clubhouse.
talking about. Clubhouse. Yeah. What are your thoughts about Clubhouse right now, Mr. CMO?
So it's funny. I was in my first Clubhouse yesterday. I've had it. I got an invite quite a while back. I honestly never went on because I'm just so busy with other stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't really know if I need to. But I went on there yesterday for the first time. I gotta say, it was pretty damn interesting. I'm like, wow, this is pretty interesting. It's a totally different way of connecting with people. That's because it's just voice and audio only. I liked it. I don't know if I'm hooked yet or if I think it's going to be the next greatest thing, in the world, but it's certainly an interesting way of connecting with people that's very different. I like the company that has a little bit of audacity to try something that's so different than, you've got TikTok for videos, Instagram for photos, LinkedIn for like the professional stuff, Facebook for more personal stuff, Twitter for whatever you want to put on Twitter, it seems like. Um, and so this here is just like an interesting angle. I gotta say, I was pretty impressed. But in terms of my assessment, I don't know if I would invest any marketing dollars in there yet. I'm investing a little bit as a company in TikTok. So working with some influencers in TikTok. Just not spending a lot of money, but just trying to figure out that medium. Haven't really cracked it yet. But just trying to figure out because think about what Matterport does. We're, I think, one of the most visually stunning and interesting platforms in the world. It's the first time in my life I've worked with something that's that interesting from a visual perspective. And so TikTok is a very visually and interesting platform as well. There must be something there. Same with like Pinterest Instagram, great platform. Anytime going out and writing an article about Matterport is not as interesting as seeing a Matterport space. So I'm trying to work with the platforms that are much more interesting from a visual perspective.
Oh, that's super cool. I know I went all the way off all social media over a year ago, except
Okay.
LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. So anybody can
Yes.
contact me on LinkedIn. That's about
Same
it.
here.
And then, yeah, and then the team runs all of Kindred's social media. So I'm really not on. It was
Mm,
very freeing. It freed up
mm,
so much time and bandwidth. And so Clubhouse, I get the invite a couple weeks ago. I peeked in there because I'm like, oh, I don't want to get sucked into a new. But in my housemate, he was in the house and he was actually one of the moderators, and he's also been a speaker in the med tech space. His investors
oh,
were in the room. They
hey,
had like
okay.
160 people listening to this panel. And
No,
he just like absolutely loved it. So I do see the future value in it.
yeah,
Once it catch, and I think it's going to catch on really quickly. So
totally,
cool.
totally.
I'm
Yeah.
glad we got to chat. You guys heard it first. Clubhouse,
That's
how it
right.
actually
Go
works.
try it out.
Okay, let me say I just have a couple other questions. Oh yeah, so two more questions. One is so we talked about marketing, bringing new people in the door,
Mhm.
storytelling. Now they're living there in the community. How do you slow down churn, move outs, people leaving?
Uh, I mean, honestly, you know much more about this space than I do. I don't really know how do you slow down churn. I think you have to just make the experience awesome. I mean, think about it. It's a similar life cycle to what I experience in software. I've been dealing with software as a service most of my career or technology. So first, you have to attract people to a space or to your company, same to your space. But then once they're in there, you got to make it awesome for them. And that means you constantly have to show them the love. That's why in the especially last 10 years in the software world, we've really seen the rise of what we call customer success. There's probably something to be replicated um, in the physical world around customer success. And customer success is all about how do you make sure that people who are using your technology or space are happy, that they tell other people about it, that they're getting the full value out of it. And if not, let me figure out ways that you do get the full value out of it because we know all the signals. If you're not getting the full value out of anything, the likelihood of you churning is very high. So in your world, I would imagine it's similar. I don't see why it would be that different, but it's about constantly adding surprising ways of value to the customer.
Awesome. And I'll just use the term community living, as that
Mhm.
encompasses co-living, of course.
Yep.
This is my last question. Where do you see community living 10 years from now?
What's interesting is my mom and dad were real hippies. My mom, she fled America in the 60s because she wanted to get away from the Vietnam War and all everything because her partner was drafted into the war. And they fled across Europe and Asia and Africa. They've traveled a lot and they lived in lots of communities, lots of these. They lived in a kibbutz in Israel for a while. They lived in a commune in Sweden for a while, and so the idea of co-living or community that way, and they're probably going to morph a little bit. I think is super interesting. I mean, it's certainly proven that people need each other more than ever, and we're happier together. And so there must be a way. I'd like to think I'm a very optimistic person. There must be a way of having the best of both worlds, where you have both your own space, but also all the people around you that make you better. I mean, that was the vision of WeWork, and we were starting to go into what we called We Live. But similar in the work situation or in the living situation is we're better with people around us who can both foster a sense of community, challenge us, but make us happier and so on. We know loneliness is a big epidemic in the world, and I think social media has amplified that epidemic, and of course coronavirus now even more so, which is really sad. I think once we're through this, there's going to be such an energy burst of people wanting to get together and being with each other and hugging each other and being like close, in a world that where we show true humanity and love and compassion to each other. I think we're going to see a huge surge in that. I don't know if that means that everyone's going to go live in co-living, but I think people are going to say, I'm going to spend more time with my neighbors. I'm going to spend more time with the people that I love. I think that's absolutely going to happen.
Awesome. No, that's amazing. And it's so great. I know it's 9 p.m. there, so I love how much energy you brought to this meeting. I appreciate it. I'm sure everybody listening, watching appreciates it too. So, Robin, thanks so much for coming on this week. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Christine. Great to see you.
Same here.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. And keep in mind, we are on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, and iTunes. And also, if you are a co-living community, you can reach out to us to be listed on the Kndrd platform. That's Kndrd.io. It's a great way to showcase pictures, videos, virtual tours of your community. Also, we have a link in the show notes for our 3 books on co-living. You can also find one of them on Amazon.com if you'd like the print version. And lastly, a very quick shout out to our partners over at ISL Furnishings. They bring light to your vision and already work with some of the larger companies like Star City and Quarters. See you guys next week.